I'd like to apologize for whatever just happened. I stepped out and looked at it for 30 seconds, and yes, I apologize. I'm Jeff Grubb from Giant Bomb. We're back at the Warframe Villa here for Summer Game Fest. We've got another couch we're going to get to here in a second after I introduce some folks, starting with Jason Schrier over there on the far side of the couch.
Hello.
Staring right at me.
Do I have to call it the Warframe Villa?
You have to call it the Warframe Villa. If you go out there, it's
you
the
have to eat a burger.
You have to eat the burger. It's the Warframe Fungalow.
Okay.
There's a few other Warframe things as well. I got my Pop Agenda mug. Yeah, you got to call it all these things.
Gotcha.
Thanks for coming, Jason. How you doing?
Okay, I am doing okay. How are you doing, Jeff Grubb?
I'm gonna do worse here once that burger enters this room.
Yeah, I say I'm doing okay, but I just saw Dan in his apron, and he also just showed me a clip of him getting smashed in the face, so that was fun.
Well, that was preemptive punishment for what he just did, so I don't feel bad anymore.
All justified.
Jill Grot's here as well. Jill, how's it going?
It's going really well, actually. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling on top of it. I've got my Coke ready.
All right, good deal.
You know, I hear that Greg Miller drinks one of these, and he's on, and now I understand why.
Okay, well then maybe don't drink it if it's gonna make you a great hard. Eka, how you doing?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming by, man. Glad to see you again.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You guys are working the show. You guys showing stuff off.
We are showing Dos Divas at Play Days, and I suddenly became vegan for no reason at all just now. So.
Yeah, as did we all.
Yeah.
Phil Salvador, how you doing, bud?
I'm doing great.
Oh no! And Kate Sanchez is here as well.
Oh my God! Thank you.
Perfect.
Oh.
Give the other one to Grub. You can first pick.
All right.
I don't need it.
Okay.
Nope,
There you go. That looks.
Honest opinions.
Okay.
Don't do your clickbait. This is gross.
I'm gonna call my friend George in. Let's come by.
All right, we're gonna take some
Kansas
cheese.
style.
So Phil, what did you do at Summer Game Fest?
Yeah, you enjoy that.
All right.
Oh.
I'm gonna take a
Okay,
bite.
there you go.
All right, George.
George.
Hello. Good luck.
I believe in
You can do it.
Am I good to go to like a bite?
Yeah, take a
Okay.
bite.
I can save you.
Oh my god.
Tastes like Dan Reichert's hands.
All right. I gotta take a bite.
Okay.
Oh no.
Damn, it's pink.
Yeah, always
That's
can.
Mike Minotti's fault. He had the meat thermometer. Mike Minotti told me they were safe
It's
to
like,
go.
for anybody who can't see the burger, I'm just going to say, look at George's shirt, and it's about that.
That was 100% Mike Minotti's fault. His one job was to make sure it was safe to eat.
This is payback because Papa Agenda almost killed Dan Reichert, I guess.
I didn't hear about it.
Anybody else?
Look, I want to
I'm
play along with the
good.
bit.
I ate
That
it.
was
Oh,
awful.
too bad.
That was awful.
I was like, oh,
It tastes like tasteful dirt. It's like you add flavor to dirt.
Tasteful,
I
though.
needed to face
You ruined the bun too somehow.
Yeah.
I toasted it.
Like it's smoky and bad.
I thought it was going to be good.
Did you clean
Sully-
the grill before you...
Somebody, an adult did.
Yeah. Did you sully Guy Fieri's name by putting his barbecue
I
sauce
thought
on
that
this?
no, it's genuinely bad. I won't take offense.
It's genuinely bad.
Genuinely bad? Echo?
Listen, man, it's kind of like it's got some flavor. So
It has
Got some
it doesn't
flavor.
have
Got some
flavor.
flavor.
this is your first.
I have not grilled in 25 years.
It looked like you never learned to flip a burger. So
Yeah.
I
like,
flipped it like 20
very.
times each.
Before the segment, he was running around to Bacalar. He was like, "Where are the flippers?" Bacalar's like, "You mean a spatula?" He's like, "No, the flippers."
Dan, this is what I would tell my kids.
Yeah.
Good job. This is a good.
Yeah,
well
we
done.
did.
You did it all by yourself.
Yeah, can we get a round of applause for our chef?
Thanks, everyone. Glad
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks, Dan.
And shout outs to Dos Divas for sponsoring that, by the way. Hey,
Yay, Dos
let's talk
Divas.
about it. Dos Divas,
Yeah.
you guys are...
Charlie's grabbing the burgers.
Thank you. Please, actually, thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you.
Put it in a fallout shelter or something. Get it out of here.
Oh, he's eating it.
Is that a sponsor too? Fallout Shelter.
Yeah, underground bunkers. Yeah, we got it all.
Yeah. Games journalists eat when they can. You don't understand.
Yeah.
Eka, you've been showing the game off. You guys had to get it ready. How's it going?
It's good. Like we're booked back to back to back on play days for 3 days, and it's been really good. Like a lot of good feedback, and it's like putting a demo together takes a long time, so it's good to get it out there in front of people, and feels good to get people to play it and give us some feedback on it. So
Outer Loop has just gone from game to game to game. You guys seem like you really like have a vision. You execute on it, then you're ready for something new. Is that kind of the way it works for you, or is it more to it?
yeah, I mean it's like survival.
Yeah, of
like,
course.
we have
do.
a team of 14, and people like to have a living and get living wages and get paid. So we're like, we make games on a schedule, and hopefully they turn out good. So
Yep, this is okay. So South Asian cuisine inspired. Like, what should people expect from the game?
yeah, so it's a game. It's like a turn-based RPG. So but it has like active time elements. So like Paper Mario or more recently like Expedition, those kind of things.
That's the one you want to say now. Yeah.
It's a game about two sisters named Sam and Mani, and they're traveling the world, village to village, and feeding people, because this whole world is run by their younger sister who runs the evil fast food company, and people forgot how to cook. So cooking, feeding, battling, and like our previous game, Thirsty Suitors, it's a lot about sort of repairing relationships and family drama and cooking and action. So.
Is that just like your wheelhouse? It's something you guys really like over there, that to like combine all those factors?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's probably a little bit of therapy for ourselves,
Sure.
kind of dealing with our own parents and generational issues, and kind of seeing that's interesting. I think for us, it's like there are so many games out there. Like I've talked to Jason earlier about this too. Like there's so many games out there. How do you stand out? Mm-hmm. And it's like a particular cultural perspective for us is the thing.
Right. It feels like specificity is the thing that people actually want right now, right?
Yeah. And I spent next year will be 30 years for me in games, and most of those teams before I started a company I was the only person of color or the brown guy or whatever. So I know like part of that starting a studio, I wanted to be able to focus on certain stories and characters. So.
And the studio's been going for almost a decade now?
I think 8 years this year.
8 years, yeah. What's that been like? I mean, you guys, would you ever like go back to the other side or anything like that? Are you happy with the way things are?
Yeah, I don't think I'm a good employee anymore. I don't know how to be an employee, but it's been really good. We've been doing 4 days a week for 4 years now too. That's been, and our
sounds swell.
Yeah, our team is spread across 4 continents, so like it's a pretty big international team, and it's been great.
Excellent. Kate, you are on the independent side of media, huh? How's that going?
It's great. No, I mean, similar to Ekta here, like it's really hard to get going, but it also means that we get to tell our stories and pick titles and games, and we do film and TV as well.
Sure.
And so we get the chance to actually focus on the stuff that matters to us and our writers, and that always bringing in our cultural perspectives, but also making sure that we're highlighting things that we want to champion. That type of independence, I think, is something that I will never take for granted, especially right now. So. Is
it like what are the kinds of headaches you can encounter or how they evolved over the years? Like what is it like today running a site like this?
Funding.
Yeah.
That's the big one. Well, primarily it's the fact that, like, for us, so me and my husband run But Why Though, and a lot of it is us trying to maneuver everything and make us look bigger than we are most of the time, just to get in that
Punch
door.
above your weight, yeah.
Exactly. And kind of just push forward. But like what comes with that is making sure that we're creating a very stable environment for all of our writers, and making sure that we're not expanding ourselves past being able to support them. So for us, it was really important that any funding that we get goes directly to our writers, goes directly towards site costs, everything like that. So we don't take anything from it. I got a day job, so that's probably the harder thing. But it lets us really empower younger writers, and that's one of the things I think that I've noticed. I used to be in recruiting, and entry-level positions are just completely evaporating in everything. And in media, we're seeing it a lot more, especially with very senior people going for freelance jobs. Now that's eating up for folks who are just getting started. So how do you get that byline? How do you get those introductions to editors? We try really hard to really invest in that first, and just send people where we can.
Yeah, I was talking to Alana Pearson, Billy Shibley yesterday, and we all started writing for free while we were young, 15 years ago or more. And it's like, we all said we were glad we did it. We would never recommend it to anyone today, or really even back then had anyone ask me. I'm like, I'm doing this. It's a little bit shameful, but I'm learning a lot. You're right. There's not a lot of like minor leagues for people who need to like learn the ropes. What's it like? What do you tell a young person when they kind of come into your orbit about this space?
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Like that's a big thing. I think right now, especially with being around so many senior people, you're scared to ask questions. And when I used to mentor students, that was it. Like there really is no stupid question because you don't know what you don't know. So ask for a contact. Ask how to move in a space. Ask somebody to review your interview. Ask somebody to review your interview questions. Do something to just get better. And understand that everybody is growing. So like nobody is going to be the pinnacle of anything. We're all gonna learn and we're all gonna grow. And that's been what's been keeping us going, and I think really has kept our site alive in spite of a lot of things. And honestly kept it so we could keep paying consistently. Once we started, when we started up, we were volunteer based for maybe I think like two-ish years. We've been around for 8. And we've been able to maintain it, even when we're paying out of pocket, that kind of stuff. But we've been able to get people to go dev side, so switching to doing community manager roles, marketing roles, stuff like that. So ask questions and find pockets where you like really just fit and make you happy.
Yeah, try to find your people a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, I got a friend, Dalibor Domovsky, who runs side questing, and I always like have been sending people like, hey, how do I get in here? I'm like, I don't know, go talk to Dali. He runs a site. Do that work for a while. Maybe something can happen. He's got a lot of people who have eventually went on to find other jobs in the industry. When a person does come to you or comes in this space, are you telling them that there is not a lot out there, or what do you like? What's the reality?
Level set. You have to be able to, so I used to do university recruiting as well, specifically at a game studio. Everybody, like, it's easy to act like it doesn't exist, but that doesn't help anybody. You have to prepare them to understand what the reality is, because that's the only way you can build that resilience, which none of us should have to have. But if you're prepared, you know what to go in with. You know that, okay, cool, I can start freelancing, but I may need to have a day job, or I can, knowing how long that road is. But the big thing is to also, like, we're talking a lot about like what younger people can do, but I also think there needs to be a lot of conversations about what established people can do, because a lot of the times, especially as jobs have gone up, it is a competitive space. Competition breeds taking care of yourself, and a lot of the times nobody is reaching their hand back. Nobody is lowering that ladder or keeping the door open behind them. So I actually think as good of a conversation it is to talk about young folks and how to get into those entry positions, we should also be having the conversation is like, what can we do when we have access to open the door for somebody else who's just starting, and making sure that like we're not the only ones in the room, because I'm oftentimes the only brown woman in the room. But it only gets better if we're all reaching back. As much as somebody's reaching up, they got nobody to grab onto.
What does like putting the ladder back down look like, you think, right now?
It means giving other people opportunities. And whether that is like, I think actually some of my friends do it really well, even for me, because I still don't know a lot of people. If you are sitting in like the JW Marriott for Summer Game Fest and you have somebody who is with you, take the time to introduce them to the person you're talking to. Take the time to bring them to different groups. Don't just assume everybody knows everybody, because those little tiny connections build up into something really beautiful, and that's how people maneuver in this space. Unfortunately, it is a lot about who you know, but if you're I'm mainly introverted, so like I have gotten very far by people being like, Kate, talk to somebody. And like, obviously putting money where your mouth is and helping people financially, or like giving them specific pain opportunities is important, but it can literally be as simple as just saying, hey, have you met Jason Schrier? Hey, have you met somebody who is bigger? And what that does is it lets them feel included, because one of the main reasons people bounce out of any industry isn't necessarily imposter syndrome, but it's when it starts becoming reality, because you're left out of invites, because you're left out of conversations. And that's kind of what we owe to everybody else, to kind of just be the mentor, or even just like the person in the room that we would have liked to had when we first got started. Yeah.
Jill, you're still doing the Indian Farmer, right?
Still doing the Indian Farmer, yeah. My staff left me.
Yeah.
Where did they go?
You tell me how that's going. Does this conversation sound familiar?
No, 100%, yeah. The touchstones we're all talking about. I mean, one of the pieces of advice that I give, and it's not accessible to everybody, is try to go to these sorts of things, because it is so valuable to see someone face to face, because once they've seen your face, they sort of, for some reason, or trust you more, or think they know you a little bit better, so you're getting more of those jobs, and you're getting more connections to things that you can check out later, because this is a wild time to try to be writing about games right now.
Or making games right now.
Or making games right now, 100%. Yeah. For people who don't know, I started at Game Informer. That all happened. And then I started the Indie Informer, and then when Game Informer went away, I took on contributors who were former informers who are now back. That's so great. I love to see it. To have one win in this space right now is so amazing. It keeps you floating for the next year, you know. But when people ask, how do you get into games journalism? Again, I started as a Game Informer intern, so I was writing for free as well. Not something that even exists anymore. So there's nowhere for people really to go. There's no, like, get this degree and talk to this person and then you can work up the ladder. There's no ladder anymore. The people who made it all the way to the top are getting cut viciously from places, and places are disappearing, which is why preservation is so important. You know? it's harsh, and I'm really happy to be running the Indie Informer where I can focus on indie games. And Dos Divas is amazing, and I can't wait to share more details about that. Check it out.
I didn't tell her to do that.
Brought to you by Dos Divas.
No, but it is very, very good. It's one of the best games that I've played so far.
Oh wow, thank you so much.
It is a lot of fun to be able to cover the games you're interested in, cover the games that are perhaps not getting the same spotlight as other games. 'Cause it's such a weird reversal for me. I'm talking to other people and talking about like, oh, I had to turn down certain AAA things because that's not in my wheelhouse. I'm not interested in covering things to some degree that are getting that kind of coverage elsewhere. I'm trying to like shine that light and hopefully get more people interested in things that are normally not like the huge crowd pleasers at a Keighley show or any showcases that are happening. Like the Wholesome show was great this year, and I know less people are going to see it than Day of the Devs, even though Day of the Devs was amazing. Yeah. But because it follows the big game show or the big showcase, not as many people are going to see the Wholesome Direct, you know. So
how do you make sure that you are, when you are trying to cover these games that you say less people are inherently interested in because of it's just not the big brand name? How do you make sure that they keep coming back to you when they're like, wait, I did discover something new and interesting, and now I know where to go for that? How do you sort of build a community, I guess?
You'd be weird.
Yeah.
You'd be weird.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it helps too because AI, and that's a whole thing, is like starting to come in. So if you're, thank you. If you're weird, if you're interesting, if you're enthusiastic, like that's how you get people on board, because like people can sense that if you're interested in something and are trying to share your enthusiasm with other people and or things that you're interested in, that's what is going to keep people coming back. Not just like, oh, I have to cover this thing because it's the big thing, and you know, and I'm not in love with it. But like, I'm not saying anybody does that, you know. But it is really nice also to just be in a space that I run, and I don't have to worry about getting cut all of a sudden, and where the funding comes from Patreon, so I know that it's a bunch of people who really care about what we're doing, and just trying to constantly be in contact with different people to know, hey, you can reach out to me at any time if you've got something interesting. Even if you're not well known, I get people reaching out to me being like, hey, I'm a solo person, you've never heard of me, but here's my thing. And I'm like, that looks great, let's talk about it, because they don't get that opportunity in a lot of different places, and that's what I'm trying to do. As, you know, a person who, it's basically me right now. Maybe I'm getting more contributors in the future, like maybe we'll have some announcements soon, who knows, but it's really hard to balance, like you were kind of saying, taking care of yourself as well, because there are so many things, especially during Summer Game Fest, where you're like, this is amazing, I want to play this, I want to go do this, I want to go see these people, I want to do everything, I want to cover every showcase. But you can't do that and sleep and eat. So you do have to kind of worry about yourself, and I think that's very important too. So one of my bigger rules when people are working for me is that we don't cover stuff during the showcases or the games or the events themselves. We wait till the week after, so that people can go to those things and sleep. Yeah.
I've definitely found that there's value in that. Like coming a week later with like actually covering the same thing, but you've had time to digest it a little bit. People are like, actually, no, I'm still interested, and now someone's still talking about it. And you do find the people who truly do care about that thing, instead of just like, I want to ingest every headline or whatever. Right. So yeah, that's very interesting. Jason, I've heard you've written a few books.
How come they're not sponsoring this?
Whose fault is that?
Yeah, I guess it's Warframe's fault.
Yeah, it's Warframe. Absolutely. Nah, Warframe would have been totally happy with that. I'm blaming you.
This is the Play Nice couch.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you telling us or yourself?
Yeah.
The meaning is left to interpretation.
So if you were to like start writing a book today about where the industry is at, where everything is, kind of when it comes to the creative mediums, where would you start? Like, how would you? What would be the thrust of that book?
Well, I could write a book about the industry's insane volatility, focusing on game studios let's shut down. But I already did that in 2021. So,
exactly, yeah.
I mean, what am I going to do again? No, I don't know. That's a good question. I think if I were to do another book, it might just go in a totally different direction. Maybe I'll just do a fiction book. That's my plan.
Oh, that's actually really cool. We'll talk about that in a second, actually. I'm curious. But the volatility, it really hasn't gone away, right? It's gotten worse?
It's, yeah, I mean, you could say it's gotten worse. It's hard to say because the numbers are higher, but the numbers overall are also higher. So, like, the number of people who were laid off last year is the highest ever, but also the number of people total employed in the video game industry was the highest ever. So, it's hard to say what's worse, what's better, but it's definitely a time of
that
chaos
sounds
and
volatile to me, like
volatility.
hiring more than ever, firing more than ever.
That's true. But that's why people call it a correction, because the question is like, are they just going to return, or are the numbers just going to return to pre-2020 times? The bigger question is why the people on the bottom are getting punished for the decisions of the people on the top, but I'll leave that to the gods to decide. It's definitely, it's real bad, and like, it's especially, I was just ranting about this to someone, it's especially bad when like a company isn't just doing a layoff, it's doing like rolling layoffs throughout the year. And it's like you look at EA, right? And EA has had like 3 different layoffs this year so far. And instead of just saying, we are going to make our cuts because we have to, and like, I understand that. I understand if you feel like you have to make cuts. Instead of saying we're going to do it on this one day and that's it for the fiscal year, they are just kind of like, it's just a bloodbath all year long, and people who are work there just have to worry constantly about an axe over their head. People at Xbox right now are just like constantly worrying every single day they're going to get the email, and that's just sick. It's just twisted.
Yeah, and it feels like when I see that those rolling layoffs, it's like, do they know what they're doing? Do they? And I guess the answer to that is probably not, right?
God, it's so grim. I guess the explanation that they might have is like, we want to see if we can preserve X number of jobs. Maybe if this number of people quit, we don't have to make that cut. Maybe let's see how this other milestone goes or whatever, but still, it's all bullshit.
Phil, historically, publishers have been, they did serve a purpose, but today, these days, I find myself wondering, like, what does an EA do? Like, what do they provide that we can't get from?
Job?
Yeah, exactly. Like, have you seen that like arc, that trajectory of like, hey, yeah, publishers made sense once, but now do they even make sense to themselves?
It's complicated because I feel like, they're like, publishers had a different role back then. Like, everything that's happening now, I have been thinking about it in the context of the '83 crash, which was another like correction we saw, and '83 U.S. console industry crash. I know you're very familiar with the distinction you have to make
absolutely,
there.
Yes,
exactly. But I think it was a similar case then, where that was a bit of an overinvestment in it, where it was like they put too much into the like distribution and sales and manufacturing, and they expected like, oh yeah, of course the line's always going to go up, we have to do this, and then the overcorrection was on that side of things, and that affected the people, like the executives at those companies. Versus now, the overinvestment was we hired too many people, and now they're on the receiving end of that. So I can't speak at all to like what indie devs are doing or anything like that, but the role that publishers had as being like, we are the people who get things to stores, like increasingly that has seemed less and more of a solved issue and less important. Not to say there's not obvious like discoverability problems and things like that, but where a publisher may have overinvested before was in their own operations, and now it's at the expense of people they're hiring to make infinite content forever, because after the pandemic, the line was always going to keep going up. It's I don't know necessarily that publishers have an outdated role, but I think a frustrating role now, where it's like, why is all the funding being controlled by people who don't even really, have a stake in the product? Not that they don't have a stake in the product, but compared to like, we have to make 12 million cartridges of ET, like there's a little bit less of a material investment in something like that.
Yeah, and it just feels like there's that letter that leaked from Phil Spencer to like internally during the FTC trials or whatever, where he was like, oh, the role of the publisher has changed, and like we have to sort of establish ourselves as this thing that people can attach emotionally to, because we used to have this lock on retail, and we exploited that, and now we don't have that anymore. And it doesn't feel like any publishers actually really figured that part out, which makes me wonder, can they?
Yeah, I think Atari actually is a really good example of this, like historically, because at the time they were, this like heavily demand creating great products. Things fell apart, they got sold off, they were kind of in the wastes for a while as like Infogrames or Hasbro or whatever, and they're back now. And if you look at interviews with their CEO, Wade, he says like, part of what they do, it is some software sales, some hardware, but a big part of it is like lifestyle branding stuff. I was just at Super Nintendo World in Universal here because it was like, well, I'm in LA, may as well go here. And it was like, oh yeah, this is like a lifestyle brand. Like this is, like Mike Minotti with the Disney years. It's like, they're moving towards that, right? Like that's kind of what they're trying to do.
His ass. Yeah.
And so whenever like we have conversations with developers about like copyright stuff and all that, it's often like, oh, well, you're interested in like using our IP without a permission. And it's not about, the thing they're putting out in the world. It's about like, yeah, we are like a bit of a lifestyle brand is kind of the image. That's why Xbox is putting out what are the thing they did in Canada? It was like the milk bag Xbox. Did you see that?
I did not see this. I do know they have milk bags in Canada.
Well, it's like the mini fridge they did, but it's a milk bag holder for Canada specifically. And it's like, okay, that's the direction that maybe publishers make sense in. It's like, going from we are manufacturing things to we make novelty milk bag holders. Like maybe not that dramatic of a transition, but like
everything is an Xbox.
Yeah, that's true.
Including the milk bag holder. Yeah.
Oh yeah. If it could play games that would, like if it was like a Xbox Classic that could also was a milk bag holder, that would be amazing. That would be great. but no, I could see that though. Like as publishers start to pivot towards being like brands people can invest in, like moving away from the traditional gatekeeper role they held for so long, as more and more people just go to Steam or. I'm really amazed how much indie self-publishing there is now at this point, which is something you just did not see back then.
No, of course not. And that's like where it's like interesting when you look at the '83 crash. It was like then. The reason that crash was globally affecting is like there's a lot of money waiting there for someone to take, and Nintendo and a bunch of others are waiting in the wings a few years later to figure that out. Now it's like, okay, well, who's waiting in the wings? It does feel like the indie space is like going to fill in those gaps.
And Nintendo of America is a great example because we think of Nintendo as a juggernaut today, and they were bigger in Japan, but Nintendo of America at that point was like a couple employees in a warehouse, and they were like, hey, manage this thing, and like. You hear stories about like the launch of the NES, and it was just like a toy store in New York that did a test market for, and the employees are like back behind a mirror, like watching excitedly as the first person buys the NES. But like they were a small company too at some point, and like eventually became this bigger entity. It's like there is less of a barrier now of like if you are a small company, you don't have to put in the kind of massive capital investment up front to like make something like that. Even like the 2000s, when you look at like the Nuon or the Phantom game console, where like people are like having to like raise all this money just to have a delivery system for what they're doing, that is less of a thing now. And so it's what does matter are, I don't want to say the creatives, I hate that word, but the people who are actually creating these things, who are creating this art and these experiences people like.
I mean, I think like when you talk about the lifestyle brand, I get that's what those companies are doing, but it's like the reason most people are in this space as consumers is they want the video games. And it feels like when we look at these big companies, they're kind of turning away from that a little bit out of necessity. I don't really care what the reason is, but I just don't feel like their gaze is in my direction, right?
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything to add to that. Just yeah. It's like I'm not really sure. But no, it is especially looking at. I'll make sure to talk, but looking like old E3s and all those things, like just the volume of product was so much larger. I think at that point versus now we have. All these titles have to be load-bearing games. So it's like, if you're Sony doing all these live service things, like, kind of in the same way that, like E.T., it was like, oh shit, we have to sell like 10 billion copies of this. It's like, oh, Concord has to make hundreds of millions in the first day, or like it's a failure, right? Like it's that kind of. Or do we have that?
It's right above your head, right behind you. So it's like the worst position for you specifically.
Right, like frame of Concord looming over me. Yeah. No, but yeah, I think as the amount of product they output has decreased, I guess that makes sense to me. They're doing that. It's not like were you raising your hand to say something?
No, I was not.
I thought you did.
I was here to.
Oh, you were
the
gesturing
game
at Concord here. Okay, I thought you were trying to.
There it is. Yeah.
Brought to you by Concord. Thank you.
That's right.
Let's talk about the indie space in terms of like. We're pitching stuff for new projects. I always assume our game sells 0 copies, so a year before we ship, we start thinking about new projects. And
of course.
That's out of necessity. And when I was pitching a couple years ago before we started Dust-Diva, and now the big difference is a lot of these sort of smaller publishers that were funding stuff then, they're funding stuff way less, and they're asking for way more. Because they can't. Because
Wait, what does asking for more mean? Yeah. Like asking for more ownership of your IP, more like, or what?
Everything, but before you could really have like a simple version or a concept for a game, and then they're like,
that version of
you've shipped stuff before, we believe you can do this, so let's do a deal. Now it's like, it doesn't matter if you shipped stuff before.
Where's the new demo?
Give us a more gameplay, figure, like, hey, solve all the unknowns for us, and what the fuck do I need a publisher for at that point, right? Like, we might as well just do it ourselves, right? Like, so they're
it sounds like they're more risk averse than they've ever been.
So much risk averse, and you're not going to find any interesting titles when you're like, hey, come back to us when you're done with the game and we'll put our publishing label on it, which doesn't really doesn't add much to a developer. So.
And worse terms, right? They're giving worse.
Yeah,
worse
and bad
contracts.
terms. Yeah,
The terms for
because-
publishers are almost as bad as book publisher terms.
Oh no! Ooh, I didn't know it was that grim. Shit.
So so like for us, we're thinking, started thinking about this last year, which is like, it's going to be grim in this year, next year, maybe for the next 3 years, who knows? But like, we're focusing on smaller titles too. So
When I do my news show and we talk about this stuff, it's always like, well, Grand Theft Auto 6 and Switch 2. Like when you guys are talking internally, like, is there like rays of hope at the end of tunnels ever?
yeah, I mean, I think there is, but it's just there's a lot of titles. There's a lot of demand, or I mean, there's an audience, but there's just so much stuff out there. And publishers are like, I heard this, they're like, oh, we just want to find our next Balatro. I'm like, no one's going to pitch you the next Balatro. Even if they did, you wouldn't even see
wouldn't even know
understand
it.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
You
No,
would not go
Balatro
for
is
it.
such a fun example because if you look at, say, like the reviews of Balatro that went up on the embargo day for Balatro, there were about 5 or 6 reviews, one of them being the Indian Informer. And then the 20 or 30 that came later were only by word of mouth. So like Balatro only became this big thing much later after it dropped. So I think there's some glimmer of hope, I hope, with like the fact that like gamers as a whole are ready to hear about indie games and ready to hear about what's the next cool thing. There are a lot more people in our space talking about smaller games. There are a lot more people interested in starting programs for smaller games. Whether or not we believe that that's in good faith, who knows?
Sure.
But like, I want to believe that the indie space is doing exceptionally well, even though it's hard to do that when you
It's
can see.
maybe possible to do exceptionally well.
Yes.
I think the scale, like a lot of I do a lot of outreach. You're talking about mentorship, and I had a bunch of folks that helped me, like when I started my company, and I do a lot to do that. And a lot of my thing is like, if you have a day job that pays you, keep it. Work on your project on the side. Test it with folks. Like, don't like quit your job and be an indie, because it is just like, you don't know if you can make
It's a
something
lottery
interesting.
ticket, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like test it out other ways.
Yeah.
As much as possible.
It's really interesting, and a lot of people don't like it when I say this, but because I've worked in big tech and recruiting, I've worked in games and recruiting, and there's something that is very similar between them, especially because the games industry likes to see itself not as tech, but it needs to reckon with the fact that it is being run as tech. And the ray of light really is indie development, because that doesn't exist in the tech space very specifically. Like, you have open source and you have like small startup apps that are coming up, but you don't have the type of investment or out that you can get with the type of indie game. And I think that, like, when I look at it, I've had the awesome chance to be a part of first ever layoffs for like 2 companies. And it's rough, but you can always see the signs in what they're doing. And it's this mass chasing to keep going, right? Hire more engineers, because that will get us the project, which will mean we don't have to lay anybody off, and then we can keep everybody. And you start outgrowing your means because you're not thinking about sustainability. You're not thinking about scalability. And that happened in tech. It's happening in games, especially as the talent from a lot of software companies and a lot of big tech decided to retire in games and go down that road. And it's affecting a lot of the pipeline issues, because in recruiting, a lot of what is done with headcount, you're supposed to be projecting, and you're supposed to be taking into account not where you are currently, but where you can be in the next fiscal year, so that you don't overhire, you can secure jobs, and you can adjust projects. But we're in a space where like everybody in games has to realize that like what is happening, and this is actually what makes it scarier for me, is it used to be an off-ramp, right? Like games, it's always been ebbs and flows. Games is laying stuff off. Okay, I can take my technical skills and move into another industry, but this is happening everywhere.
Across the board.
And it's weird to sound so grim, but also sound so hopeful, because there are spaces specifically in the indie development scene to kind of carve out of like this really vast tragedy, but also show that there is a different way to do it, and there is a way to work for sustainability and keep that type of ownership that I think a lot of these companies have kind of lost. And you saw it in tech with like mass acquisitions of apps that took off really well. Instagram is a very great example. WhatsApp's another great example. And we saw it with a lot of the larger publishers eating up all the small companies. And so I think right now we're in a space that unfortunately is in line with everything else. But I don't know, maybe it's because I've like seen headcount numbers like for much of my career, that I think that there is a way out, but it's going to take people building that way out.
Yeah, I think one of the frustrating things for me, and this was like true back in '83 as well, is like the consumer's not really going to notice.
Yeah,
Because there's going to be
exactly.
so many games still made.
And it's all
Yeah.
dehumanized.
Right.
Because I heard stories from people in '83. Consumers were not like, "Oh, this video game industry is falling apart." They were like, "Wow, games are really cheap
They're
now
cheap.
for some
Yeah,
reason.
this is
Wow.
awesome.
What?
Yeah.
Look at all these
for
games for sale for
themselves.
$1 on the eShop.
Yes.
This is great for us." Yeah,
Yes.
that's not. There's not consumer dissatisfaction. It's a management problem.
Yes.
That's why these
Exactly.
things happen. Yeah.
I want to say I am hopeful because I love making games, and
Yeah.
and there's like, especially in indie space, there's so much community. We all talk about
Yeah.
the shitty deals and who's doing good stuff or not, and like that, it's just good. There's a lot of community.
I'm hopeful too because I
Yeah.
do look at Outer Loop and you guys are making these games and it's like, all right, another Outer Loop game. It's yeah, that does give me hope. We got to wrap up soon. There's a couple things though. Fiction. Which JRPG is your fiction book going to be based on, and why is it Suikoden 2?
It's going to be the story of two best friends who are separated and have to. No, it's not going to be that. It's going to be a fictional story about the video game industry and how it all falls apart. No, I don't know. I'm just making it better.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm not.
How about how
Maybe
it all
it's gonna
comes
happen.
together?
Yeah.
And then
We
Phil,
have a happy ending.
Phil, I believe you also got into the courier service.
I
recently.
did. We decided to save on postage fees.
Okay.
So at the Video Game History Foundation, we do a thing where we have a lot of excess magazine inventory, and so every month people can subscribe to get a
Where?
random.
Where can they subscribe at?
At gamehistory.org/donate. Brought to you by Warframe.
What's my subscription this
So
month?
you subscribe, you generously subscribe, so I decided to bring your magazine this month.
I appreciate it. I also was going through Dan's earlier, and that was a hell of a thing.
That we can't show that one on stream. That's
Of course, Insight featuring Jericho.
everyone's favorite video game character, Chris Jericho. Yeah.
Yes, Jericho. Is Insight, was this one of the ones that was like by a retailer or something like that?
I think it was called like Computech Media or something really strange like that. It was like an attempt at like gaming for young men, so it's like games, but also half of it is wrestling. It was like, if anyone's
perfect.
gonna get this, okay, you can get it.
Yeah, I'm going to treasure it. I appreciate it. Thank you all so much. We got to get back.
Sega gets evil. It
Yeah.
says that.
We got to get back to the Warframe Villa for a little bit. Actually, I have a double check here and make sure we're not going to miss anything. Actually, I'm not sure where we're going right now.
Ow!
Beck, are we going out there for another Dan segment or something like that?
Oh no.
We better not.
All right.
Who complained about the burger temp?
I think that was just George, actually. Yeah.
George.
They were fine. I said they'd be safe, not cooked to your preference.
Try it.
We're going to go to the Fungalo right now. Thanks to Warframe. Thanks to Annapurna. We'll be back right after this.